Hello, my name is Siju. I'm going to take you through a video demonstrating some of the use cases of a component called data model, which is available in the Alfresco process services. If you have already read my blog post around this topic, you would know that we use the component to integrate business processes with external data stores. In this example, I've built a couple of business processes. So these business processes are around the insurance industry, where you will have a process to create a policy, and you will have another process to create a claims entry into the system. So it's more like, as a new customer, you will go into the website of your insurance provider and enter your details, and that will take you through a policy creation. And so at the back of it, it's basically a business process: collect some information, go through a sequence of review, approval, and eventually that gets stored in a system of record. And in this case, I'm going to show you how you can do that using business processes built-in activity, and how you can use a component called data model to make that integration easy. And in the second business process, which is a claims process, I'm utilizing some of the policy data that are entered as part of the policy process to review, to validate my claims data. So let me take you through the process first. So for the purpose of the demo, it's all about demonstrating the data model capabilities. So I've decided to skip like a lot of other components that are normally part of a real life policy creation process. So in this example, all I have is a start activity, which got a form associated with it. I call it a create policy form. The form will basically collect some information about the policy holder, and it eventually saves the information into your external data store, in this case, Elasticsearch. And my second process is a claims process, which again collects some information from the applicant, and there's a parallel gateway. It goes into a verified data. The verification process is just to check some of the contact information against the data that is available in the policy. And if there are mismatches, I'm prompting the user to update the policy. And the reviewer over there wants to see the latest policy information all the time. So that's the use case here. Let me now execute these two processes. And once I've successfully executed these two processes, I'll come back to the implementation of these processes and what it takes to actually implement a data model, and how would you use a data model across all the other components like forms, decision tables, gateways, etc. So let me create a policy first. I need to have a valid policy in order to raise a claim. So let me call it as a policy. Let me give it an ID, policy 1, customer name, Siju. Let me give my full name and email. Let me give my personal or my company email. And let me give my contact number as 1234. I'll start a process, and because it's a simple process, it's completed. So if you now look at it, this is the policy that got created and entered really quick. And that's because my policy process is all about storing the information using the data model into my external system of record, which is Elasticsearch. Now I'm going to use that policy ID to start my claim next. So let me start a claims process. So I have the claims process selected. I'll enter the policy ID, which is the policy ID that I just created. And in a real world scenario, a claims process might come maybe a month later, a year later, or it'll never come if you're lucky. And in this case, say that we are raising a claim 6 months after the policy has been created. So there's a good chance my email ID, I want to update my email ID, or I'll nominate my personal email ID in this case. Then my number has changed. So I'm going to say my number is 9876. And I'll enter the claim amount as $100. Okay, let me look at the process. Now you can see the process has gone into these two parallel paths. So the data is entered and it's gone into these two paths. The one with the green border are the components that are active now. The one with the blue borders are those that are completed. So the one with the green borders are basically a review claim form that normally goes to a back office user to review the information, and the update policy typically should go back to the policy holder saying the data that you entered at the time of policy creation doesn't match with the claims information. Why don't you want to update your policy with the most recent and accurate contact information so that you can be contacted right away when there are questions? And the customer can decide not to, right? So it could be a matter of like them entering another information, like a different contact details just for this claims processing, but they want to keep the same old data as part of the policy. So it's just a matter of creating a task and letting the customer decide whether to update or not. So let's now look at the review claim first. You can see the data policy 1, that is a policy ID, and we did not enter Siju Joseph as part of the claims process. So it is clearly coming from the policy information. And all these information are also coming from the policy data store. So before we go into the details, let's go back to the Elasticsearch instance. So Elasticsearch comes with a lot of really good REST APIs. So I can query Elasticsearch with the IDs. In this case, I'm using the policy ID as the ID of my document. So this is a search that I did before this demo, and there wasn't any record with this ID. So I'm going to do it again. You can see there's now data associated with this ID, and this is the data that I entered. Right? Alfresco.com, the contact number is 1234 CG Joseph and policy 1. And if you look at the review form, that is the same information that's being fetched into the review task. And this new information is the contact details I entered when I created the claims. Let's not action on this for the time being. Let's go back to the process and update the policy. So in this case, my policy information says alfresco.com, but as part of the let's go back to the process and look at the rules that got executed. You can see the rules got executed. The contact email entered is cgu@gmail.com. Contact number is 9876. And it clearly says it doesn't match with the policy detail contact number. So it is telling me that the data needs to be fixed. And that's how we arrived at this update policy task. So in this case, I'm going to retain my email ID as alfresco.com. I don't want to change that. Might use the Gmail for claims processing, but for any policy related updates, I might use alfresco.com. But my contact number has changed. So I want to update the policy with my right contact details. It is plus 9876. Let me complete it. Now that I've completed, In the out-of-the-box UI, it takes me back to the next task. So the next task available for me is the review claim. So now if I review the claim, you can see it fetched the latest data that is available in Elasticsearch, something that we just updated back into the review form. So previously it was showing this data 1, 2, 3, 4 and alfresco.com. And now after the policy has been updated, the review form is showing the new information. Right, so let's complete this. And claim 1, I completed that task. Let's now look at the Elasticsearch directly. So whenever I create a claim, I create that in an index called insurance index and an event type called claim event. And I'm using the ID that I'm usually entering in the form. So let's do that. Okay, contact number on the policy is 9876. Contact number entered on the form is 9876. That's good because at the time of completion or before the review task was completed, I, as a user, updated my policy with my right information. So both the numbers match. The customer email for the claims processing is gmail.com. Policy ID is policy1, claim amount, all the information available. So you can see a claim entry is created in my external data store using a data model component. So let's go back to these processes. And you can also see the completed forms. Right? You can see the data that was used to complete alfresco.com. You updated the policy. So yeah, you can see all the historical data too through this UI. Now let's go back to the design view. What is involved to get the data or to collect the data from the form and move it to my external store? So as a process modeler, that's something I care. Right? So as a process modeler, I will create a form. I'll add the form fields, the data that needs to be collected. And the next thing you want to do as a modeler is drop in one of these activities called store entity task into the editor component and configure some data model attribute mapping. So as you can see, I'm mapping it to a data model component called insurance data models, and I'm choosing an entity called policy. And this is a variable name. So it's basically, I'm saying copy the data, like the output information, or copy this policy information into a variable called var in this case, if I want to use that information in the subsequent steps. In this case, I'm not really using it. But this is the mapping that I want to highlight here. So we can do the mapping, input mapping of these attributes that are part of the data model called policy. So I'm basically mapping policy ID from the form field called policy ID, customer name, customer email, contact number, all these are being mapped from form field. And you also have an option to enter static value. For example, if you want to, like, say, create a policy with 1, 2, 3. I mean, this is not a real life scenario, but you can do that. And you can also use process variables to do this mapping. Okay, so that's a simple process. It's all about storing the information in your external system. And now let's go back to claims. Right. So in this case, I have again a new form to collect the claim data. So if you look at it, I have policy ID, contact email, claim amount, and contact number. But what I want to highlight here is, though we are not collecting the policy details in the form, I'm using the policy details to do some rule execution. How does that work? And the answer there is the data model component that we have in the product is integrated into all other components. That means you can use the data model in a form. You have seen that in the review form, you were seeing the policy information coming directly from a data model output. And this is the mapping that I've configured to fetch the policy details using the policy ID. So I'm now on start form, and you can see there's a configuration called form field to data model mapping. What that means is I use some of the information from the policy, and I can use that information to fetch the details of the policy. So in this case, I'm saying use the policy ID form field to fetch the details of the policy and store and create a variable called policy details. And this policy details will contain all the attributes of my policy entity. That is policy ID, customer name, customer email. Then I have that information available to do my rules execution. So in this is a business rules component. And if you look at the rules component, you can see the policy details.contact number. I'm comparing that with the claims contact number. And if that doesn't match, I'm saying equal to, like, the data needs to be fixed. The same way I'm comparing email with contact email. And then I'm using that variable to take this path, data needs fixing. You can also use the data model attributes to drive your conditions. Example, all these information, all these data model attributes are available in condition configuration as well. So it's basically like it's integrated into all the process components. And now, as a user, I'll update the policy. Once I update the policy, all I'm saying is update the policy using the same data model that we used to create the policy. So that's the reuse of a data model in multiple processes in a reusable fashion. Now, if this task gets completed before the review claim, and if the reviewer goes into that form and looks at the data, they see the latest updated policy information on the form. And you don't have to do any coding for that to happen. It's all integrated. So let me show you the form and the configuration. All you have to say is show the information from the policy details, show the policy details contact number. This is an attribute that is available in the data model. So you have all those attributes available here. All you have to do is configure it there, and you get the real-time data on your form without any REST API calls from the forms. So it's all happening under the hood of the product. So that's basically the data model usage and the implementation. And let's look at the data model definition as well. So the things that I've explained so far is the process modeling component. How do you make the data model component and all the attributes available to the process models? It is through the data model component that you see right here. And now you might ask a question, who would do that mapping? Would it be a business analyst, or would it be a business process modeler, or would it be a developer's job? And my answer to that is it depends. Right? At this level, creating a data model is a non-technical job. All you have to do is create a data model and then create various entities. In this case, I created a data model called insurance data models, and I'm defining policy as an entity, claim as an entity, and I'm saying policy got these attributes like policy ID, customer name, email, number. These are the attributes of policy. And this is typical business entities, right? As a business analyst or as a developer, you should know this information. And now, I mean, it is basically a collaboration, right? So you can, like, if you are not really aware of all the attributes that are available in your entity, you might ask a developer, or you might be a business analyst who is really good at all the entities, all the data models in your enterprise. In that case, you alone can do this job. And now, once you model this, if the data model is interacting with Alfresco 1, I don't have, oh, okay, sorry, my bad. I'm demonstrating this on an old version. In our new version, there's a new tab called Alfresco. So that allows you to integrate data model with Alfresco without any coding. The same with database. If we choose database as your data source, you can configure them all here. In this case, Elasticsearch is not a SQL database, so I had to take the custom path. So if you have to integrate with something that's not a database, a SQL database, or something that is not Alfresco one, you have to take the custom option. And in custom option, you can do the modeling here, but there is still an implementation effort, which is most likely to be done by a developer. So you can, so that's what I meant by collaboration. You can either do the modeling and then ask a developer to do the implementation of a particular interface that needs to happen, that needs to be there in order for this whole thing to work. And the developer can do that job really easy if there are well-defined APIs. All they have to do is map these attributes to the correct API parameters. So yeah, it's a collaboration. So either the developer can do the data model creation and then hand it over to a business analyst, and business analyst can use the data model, or the business analyst can create the data model, hand it over to the developer for them to implement the integration between data model, the model itself, and the actual APIs that does the actual job. So that's all about my demo. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, feel free to make a comment on the blog post or even on the video that's available on the YouTube. Thank you. Bye.